What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream here on a Thursday evening. One of my favorite times of the week for sure are these Thursday live streams where we're talking about the past. We're talking about the history of professional wrestling, specifically the dark side of pro wrestling. These Thursday streams have become one of my favorites because it's an opportunity for me to go back in to the long and storied history of professional wrestling, talking about the tales that not a lot of people talk about. I mean, obviously, we have a lot of stuff going on in the modern age of pro wrestling, but keep in mind there is a universe out there aside from the WWE. A lot of other wrestling stories, a lot of other wrestling stars who may not have had a lot of experience in the WWE definitely deserve to have their stories shared. If you're new to the live stream, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, and this is a pro wrestling YouTube channel by a fan for a fan. And if you are familiar with this channel, and if you have been a member of the live stream, well, then welcome back to the J area. Because every weekend we have a poll. We put up a poll to allow you, the audience, the opportunity to determine what exactly we're going to talk about. Just like what Cody Rhodes says. What do you guys want to talk about? This week we had a couple of options here that I really thought there was no way to go wrong. We had the loose cannon Brian Pillman as an option. We had Macho Man and Elizabeth, their arduous relationship both on and off screen. The controversial figure of the Ultimate Warrior, but decided by you, but decided by the J area. Shout out to Sean, by the way, in the chat there. What's going on, Sean? Thank you for joining us another episode of the J Area live stream. Appreciate you stopping by and choosing to spend your time here with us. But the topic that you all had chosen, or at least the mass majority, was the killing of Bruiser Brody. Now, of course, if your desired topic was not chosen, it could always come back in a future poll. Just because it's not chosen tonight doesn't mean it's gone and locked away for the rest of eternity. Eventually, we will always bring them back for another round of a voting poll. What's going on, Luis? Hope you guys are having a great week. Hopefully Thursday's treating you just as well. And as we head into the weekend, hopefully you guys have a great time there as well. Thank you guys for taking part in the chat here and saying hello. Great to see all some familiar faces, some friendly faces. Well, rather, friendly names. Granted, because I can't see your faces. But hey, it's great to see you nonetheless. I'm going to wait for a little moment here, allow people to join us here on the live stream. Again, it's a Thursday. The Thursday before the Super Bowl. How about that, huh? NFL season about to wrap up. Without the NFL, we move forward into WrestleMania season. The Royal Rumble happened just this weekend. And if you didn't join us for the live stream, you can always go back in the archives and see that. I think it's one of the best live streams we've had today. A lot of people tuned in, a lot of participation, and a lot of great moments there. So I appreciate you guys, of course, for always stopping by here and talking pro wrestling with yours truly. But nonetheless, Bruiser Brody, that's the topic at hand. Bruiser Brody, who was a titan of the sport, recognized by many to be one of the early influences of hardcore wrestling. Of course, him accompanied by the likes of Abdullah the Butcher, who were longtime rivals out in Puerto Rico, revolutionized pro wrestling by demonstrating a level of hardcore wrestling that attracted a lot of viewers due to the blood, the violence, and the severity in which the pain they would inflict upon one another. Bruiser Brody, a towering behemoth amongst other men, was not afraid to get his hands dirty, especially when it came into the ring. Shout out to Nacho Camacho there. Happy Thursday Eve, my friends. Appreciate you, Nacho Camacho, for stopping by here with us on the live stream talking about Bruiser Brody. A little bit of backstory for our friend Bruiser Brody here. And now, because we have our new little fancy getup when it comes to the live streams, I'm able to kind of present more of a visual for our friends here. Bruiser Brody, real name Frank Goodish. Took me a second there. Bruiser Brody, weighing in at over 300 pounds. 6'8". Again, a titan of the business. Recognized for his demeanor. And when I say demeanor, I mean both on and off screen. Because it really was the tale of two individuals. People who knew Frank Goodish, knew he was an intelligent man. He was a friendly giant. Someone that really wore his heart on his sleeve. However, those who had the fortune of knowing Bruiser Brody, well, they recognize him as one of the dominant forces in professional wrestling, both in North America, in Japan, and even Puerto Rico, where he had most of his prominence there. Bruiser Brody, prior to pro wrestling, spent 3 seasons playing football in the NFL for the Washington Redskins at that time, now, of course, known as the Commanders. Recently, had played in the NFC Championship game this past playoffs. After that, he met a familiar name here on the live stream, a name by Fritz von Erich, father, the patriarch of the von Erich family. Trained him and allowing him to lend his expertise to Bruiser Brody. And they always say that's the big thing here. Whenever you're looking to enter a new business or a new venture, you got to learn the ropes. And Bruiser Brody, taking from Fritz von Erich, who was one of the most dominant heels of his time. Of course, we remember him being, a certain German heel during the 50s, having never won the NWA World Championship. But of course, that pressure would pass on to his boys, the Von Erich boys. We talked about that in a previous live stream. Make sure you check that out in the archives as well. Sylvia says, I like the visuals. Thank you for putting this together. Well, me personally, I'm a visual guy. And I thought, well, what a better way than to go ahead and let you see what I'm seeing. Put a name to the face, a face to the name. That way it's not just a bunch of words. So that's very big for me. In the meantime, see if I can get the chat here. So Bruiser Brody, as we were saying, trained with Fritz von Erich. Bruiser Brody, spent a lot of time traveling on the road, as one wrestler would do. He wrestled in places like the AWA. The WCCW, of course, that was ran by Fritz von Erich. And even time in WWWF. That would be the current modern day WWE, but back in the day, it was the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the WWWF. He would even go so far as to challenge Bruno Sammartino, who had held the WWE Championship for nearly 8 years. The longest reigning championship reign of all time. Recently, a guy by the name of Roman Reigns tried to put up a record there, but couldn't, because that in itself is an accomplishment. Bruno Sammartino, the living legend. 2013 Hall of Famer. Bruiser Brody being able to rub shoulders with a guy like Bruno Sammartino, very important here. Because this would be the closest that he would be as a part of the WWE. His style didn't really mesh well with the WWE. See, those guys were up in New York. There's a little bit more class, as you would say. A little bit more storytelling when it came to the Northeast. And Bruiser Brody, recognized as a hulking figure, as I mentioned, was described as an intelligent, friendly giant, but in the ring was recognized as a brawler, hardcore wrestling. And it was known by all people in the pro wrestling business that he was very protective of his persona. He rarely agreed to lose the match because, newsflash, pro wrestling is predetermined. Some people want you to know that it's fake, but I mean, hey, the pain that Bruiser Brody was dishing out was anything but fake. He was very protective of his gimmick. And I think that's important to remember because, keep in mind, this is back in the day. You travel all the way back to the 70s. And it's not like nowadays, where with the internet, the average fan is more knowledgeable about the business. They know the ins and outs. We know when people are coming back from injury. We know when people are getting signed or fired. They had to protect kayfabe back then. If you were a good guy, you could not travel with bad guys. There were certain issues that could not be, addressed off the road. You lived the gimmick. You protected the business. And Bruiser Brody was one of those guys where, I'm a hulking figure. I'm supposed to be the guy beating up everybody. You can't contain me. He also went by the name of King Kong Brody. Because he was just that. He was an animal. A force to be reckoned with. So he wanted to protect his gimmick. Because at the end of the day, he is his own brand. He's conducting his own business. So who am I, if I'm Bruiser Brody, losing to any Joe Schmo on the street? No. I gotta beat everybody. I gotta dominate everybody. I need to set an example so that when the people come and they pay their hard-earned money and they see Bruiser Brody, and they know damn well not to mess with me on the street. So he was very protective about his gimmick and losing matches. Rarely did he agree to lose those matches. In fact, a lot of the pro wrestlers said he was kind of stiff. He would go out of his way to intentionally hit his opponents really hard, even to the point where some would suffer some injuries. On occasion, it has been proven that he was out there doing business for himself, protecting his image, of course, as I mentioned, and would inflict great pain on his opponents. Other than that, because I talked about his time in the WWF, it was brief, but he's really recognized for his times overseas. In Japan, had a huge feud with Antonio Inoki, one of their prominent figures in Japan. After he was released from his time in Japan, it was in 1987 that he began working in Puerto Rico for specifically the World Wrestling Council. Here he would continue his infamous feud with Abdullah the Butcher, who in itself has a very distinctive appearance. Some people might actually recognize Abdullah the Butcher for his trademark appearance. See, he had a fork that he would utilize on his opponents, but on occasion, he would suffer a little bit of a little blade job of himself. Seen as one of the most ferocious feuds at that point in time, Abdullah the Butcher and Bruiser Brody, on screen, were hated rivals. Could not stand each other. They shed blood as if it was a war. But of course, with that being said, it's important to recognize that these guys were friends behind the scenes. They say a lot of times that when you're really close with your friends, those tend to be the best matches. Look no further than guys like Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Those are some of the best matches you can have, is when you really have that chemistry with one another. You have a good relationship with your opponent, you're bound to have greatness. So in 87, he's working in Puerto Rico. He's having his feud with Abdullah the Butcher. He even begins a feud with Carlos Colon, who was the promoter, essentially, running the business of the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico. So he's already having feuds with top guys. Carlos Colon, Abdullah the Butcher, Antonio Inoki. A recognizable name. So him traveling the globe, it makes sense for him to take a pit stop in the WWF at one point. Here, in the WWF, it's odd to have to say it 3 times, because I'm so used to saying it only for the 2. But it's important to recognize we introduced Bruiser Brody, which means we have to introduce Jose Gonzalez, aka Invader 1. Again, Bruiser Brody was well known for being physical, recognized as one of those forces that, hey, I'm going to take my liberties with you because I need to look good for my business. I'm protecting my gimmick, my story. So the story goes here. Jose and Brody do not get along. Why don't they get along? It's a little bit of a long story, but we're going to try to condense it here, because keep in mind, this is over the course of many years between Brody and Gonzalez. Sanford 5 says, bro, that mask looks like a street sign. I mean, it might as well be. By the way they were dishing out these hits, you might as well have hit him with a street sign. But this is Jose Gonzalez. There's him without a mask. Which way would we drive into, boys? Here we see a picture of Gonzalez versus Bruiser Brody. So this is a story here between these two. In Puerto Rico, where Bruiser Brody is now under employment, Jose Gonzalez is one of their top attractions, one of their top stars. He is destined to be one of the top names in Puerto Rico. Bruiser Brody at one point goes on a little tirade. Again, takes his liberties with Gonzalez. Beats him down to the point where his credibility may have been damaged. See, because if you're trying to be a top babyface, you're wanting to be presented in a certain way. You're wanting to be presented in a light that not only presents you favorably to the boys, but also to the general audience. So if you're out here taking damage, getting beaten down, your credibility almost is diminished. And Bruiser Brody comes off looking as this monster of a man. Why are we pushing him? Why isn't he going to be the face of Puerto Rico? Look at the way he treated Gonzalez, of course also known as Invader. After this is when the tension builds up. Special Delivery Jones, also known as SD Jones, at one point claims to have heard Gonzalez vowing that one day he was going to take the life of Bruiser Brody. He is even quoted as saying, quote, "One day I am going to kill that man." That is a quote from Gonzalez, claimed by SD Jones. And if all that isn't enough to build up enough tension between the two, you have to remember the roles in professional wrestling. Obviously, there's those who are carrying out the stories in the ring. They are responsible for bringing the people into the arena. They are the attraction. They are the ones that we pay to see in the match. But also keep in mind the people behind the scenes who are booking the match, who are the ones writing the story, who have the pen in hand. That it's their responsibility to develop these stories, to get the people's interest, to get them invested in coming into these arenas, paying their hard-earned money to see the action live and in person. Well, the booker at this point was Jose Gonzalez. Invader was the booker in Puerto Rico. So now you have an issue here where Bruiser Brody not only beat down who was supposedly supposed to be the top guy, the next top guy in PR, but he's doing that to the booker. He's taking his liberties with the booker, the man with the pen. So all of that is taking place. And keep in mind, Bruiser Brody is no slouch. Very intelligent man. He would go on to make a good living in professional wrestling. And all the money that he was able to acquire through the tours in Japan, through his stint in the WWF, being in Puerto Rico, he saved up his money. Just like any intelligent investor would do. Saved up his money. And his plan was to invest in a pro wrestling promotion. He wanted to become an owner of a pro wrestling promotion. It's for the love of the game. When you love something enough, you want to be able to pay it forward and give back to that very business. And he wanted to be a promoter for a certain promotion. And the one in question would be none other in Puerto Rico. It would be the World Wrestling Council. The very same promotion that he was working in. The one that Jose Gonzalez was the booker in. And see, there was already heat between the two. Gonzalez and Brody already don't like each other because of Brody's style of wrestling. But on top of that, Bruiser Brody is heard speaking to others, his peers, the boys, saying that he's saved enough money to where he wants to dip his toes into the pool of investors in the World Wrestling Council. He wanted to become a minority owner. And he said upon becoming an owner, upon becoming a member of that board, he would relieve Jose Gonzalez of his duties. He claimed that that would be one of the first guys that would be gone no longer employed in Puerto Rico. Imagine that. Imagine you are Jose Gonzalez and you're out here on top of the world. You're the booker. You're about to be the next face in Puerto Rico. And all of a sudden, the man that you had issues with in another promotion comes over to PR and is essentially taking the thunder, is essentially removing all sensibility for the audience to become invested in your character. And now on top of that, he wants to become a minority owner and get rid of you. And keep in mind, he's already been accused of vowing to take the life of Bruiser Brody. The date is July 16th, 1988. July 16th, 1988. This is the day in question. It's a packed house. The lines are so long that the wrestlers themselves are struggling to get into the arena. It's a sellout in Puerto Rico. We have a lot of talent on this card. Guys like Tony Atlas, Dutch Mantel, Bruiser Brody, Abdullah the Butcher, the Iron Sheik. The crowd is expecting a tremendous show. The World Wrestling Council is expecting a huge night, not only in terms of success, but in terms of revenue, in terms of attendance. This was a huge night for them. The boys are in the locker room. Everyone's preparing. They're finally entering the locker room and they're preparing for the night, doing what they have to do, getting the proper stretches, getting through their regimens, their rituals, their pre-match rituals. They're trying to get the nerves going. And the story here, keep in mind, upon doing these live streams, we here at the J area do our research, but it's also because these live streams are inspired by the series The Dark Side of the Ring. So for those of you who have access to Hulu and you want to be on the know, go ahead and watch Dark Side of the Ring. That way you can come back to here on these live streams and be prepared. That way you already have an idea of what the discussion is going to be about, because this is when the story takes place in the minds of Tony Atlas. Now, Tony Atlas, Mr. USA, a WWE Hall of Famer in his own right. He's the one that tells the story from here. He's in the locker room. He's next to Brody. And he sees Brody approaching him because Tony Atlas has a scrapbook. He's a little bit of a drawer. Has his doodles. And he sees, he being Brody, he sees Tony Atlas drawing. And he loves it. He would like to know, hey, do you think you can do a little sketch of my son? And he shows him a photograph of his son, Jeff. And Tony Atlas, is a naturally good guy. He says, of course, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because if there's one thing that everyone agreed on, is that Bruiser Brody loved his family. Loved his son, Jeff. Loved his wife, Barbara. It's upon here that they're having their discussion. Again, people are starting to file into the locker room. And it's noticed that Jose Gonzalez, Carlos Colon, again, another one of the leading promoters of the World Wrestling Council, and as well as Victor Quinones, who was a prominent figure of their board as well, already held it up in the locker room. And some people thought that was kind of strange, but no one really thought too much of it. It's around this time that Bruiser Brody is then called by Jose Gonzalez. Says, hey, can I get a word with you? They step away from the locker room and they kind of head towards the showers. They want to have a private conversation. Again, all the boys are preoccupied. They're out here doing their thing, getting ready for their matchup. Again, it's a packed show. Some people got them nerves. Some people say if you're not nervous, you don't care. And a lot of people these cared. So Tony Atlas sees Bruiser Brody and Jose Gonzalez approach the showers. Tony Atlas is doing his thing, getting ready for his match. Upon hearing a struggle, he hears Bruiser Brody kind of grunt, as if he just took a blow to the gut. And Tony Atlas looks up and he sees him hunched over. He's assuming Gonzalez just hit him, that we're about to have a scrap right in the middle of the locker room. And it is at this moment that Bruiser Brody, already hunched over, is when Tony Atlas sees the knife in Gonzalez's hands. And as he reaches up to bring it down one final time, a fatal blow to Frank Goodish, Bruiser Brody. Tony Atlas approaches, pulls Brody out the way, and it misses him literally by a hair, because it's reported that his long hair ended up getting cut off. A good chunk of it was cut off in this attempt. Carlos Colon, again, one of the owners, and also the father of Carlito, which I don't believe I mentioned earlier. WWE Hall of Famer, father of Carlito, and one of the leading promoters in this promotion, pulled Gonzalez away. And they're now in the shower. Gonzalez and Colon. They're off to the side. But Tony Atlas has Bruiser Brody in his arms. They are now on the floor in the locker room. And Bruiser Brody is bleeding. He just took a shot from Gonzalez. This is attempted murder, essentially. They alert the EMTs. They got to get the paramedics here. He's in dire straits. If they don't get enough help here, this will prove to be fatal for Bruiser Brody. The issue is, as we go back and remember, it's a packed house. The lines are long. It takes nearly an hour for the paramedics to arrive on the scene. It's reported that it's nearly 30 to 50 minutes before they make it to the locker room. The heavy traffic and the large crowd did not help. It also didn't help that Bruiser Brody was a very large man. So Atlas had to help. He had to assist the EMTs in this whole process. Keep in mind, it's the EMTs, the authorities, and this is back in the day when you protected the gimmick. Pro wrestling wasn't what it is today, where we all are kind of in on the secret. The authorities thought this was a work. They were notified about a pro wrestling incident, and they're thinking, oh, it's just pro wrestling. It's just a part of the show. They didn't recognize that this was a legitimate crime. A legitimate altercation between two individuals who had real life heat. So the authorities are already in the dark. They say ignorance is bliss because you don't recognize what's going on. But the fact of the matter is, it's malpractice at this point. They're not treating it with the proper responsibility. So Tony Atlas accompanies Bruiser Brody in the ambulance to go to the hospital because no one else would go. Someone had to go with Brody. Atlas is going to be there. Atlas was the one friend that was there for Brody. And we talked about his son, Jeff. Tony Atlas says that he never let go of that photo. Always had that in hand. They say that you are who you are in your final moments, and he never let go of that picture. They get to the hospital, and upon struggling to find medical assistance, because apparently in Puerto Rico, it was just a common flu to get stabbed. But they finally get the help that they needed. They leave Bruiser Brody there because he's got to go through treatment. He's got to go through the proper procedures in order to save his life. So Tony Atlas goes back to the arena. He goes back because, of course, hey, you got to know what's going on. What's the protocol here? What are you going to do with the show? And to his surprise, rather, to his shock and horror, the show has not been canceled. A man was just attacked. A man attacked another man with the intention of taking his life. No cancellation. The show must go on. And to his horror, Atlas sees everybody laughing, having a joyous time. Hey, great match. Oh, man, that's great. Hey, did you see that crowd? Man, we're killing it out there. Meanwhile, Tony Atlas is thinking about his friend in the hospital. Everyone's talking about, oh, man, we're going to have a great matchup. Oh, what a great match. Oh, man. High fives for everyone all around. And the blood on the ground has not even dried up. It was eerie. Tony Atlas says he felt like he was going crazy, as if nothing happened. What's going on? How can this be? Someone explain this to me. How is it that Bruiser Brody is literally on his deathbed and we are all out here as if nothing happened? And then, here's the kicker. The police are there already. They want some statements. They want some reports. Hey, what's going on? And you know what the boys tell him? The boys have given their statements. And Tony Atlas naturally wants to give his. And they say, well, did you see him? Sorry? Did you see the fan? What fan? Well, the fan that attacked Bruiser Brody. Apparently a fan attacked Brody in the hallway, stabbed him. And Tony Atlas is thinking, wait a minute, what? What do you mean a fan? Well, yeah, everyone's saying that a fan did it. And at this point, Tony Atlas is irate. Furious. What do you mean a fan? He stands up and exclaims in the locker room, there's no fan. That man right there is the one that attacked Brody. And he's pointing at Gonzalez. Of course, I'm cleaning it up. I'm sure he used a little bit more colorful language. Says that man is the one that did it. That's the man you need to arrest. And nobody knew what he was talking about. They questioned Tony Atlas or said, why is your story not adding up with anybody else? Everybody else is saying it's a fan. You're saying it's him. He says, I saw it. I saw it. He says they're lying. Again, the authorities are oblivious to it all. One, because they believe it's a work, but now they're being fed all this BS, for the lack of a better term, in regards to Bruiser Brody. How can this be? How can this be? I was just there. I was with him. And now you all are saying it's a fan? Makes no sense. Tony Atlas then goes into his match with the Iron Sheik. Shout out to the Iron Sheik. And they lock up. You know, at the beginning of the matchup, when you have that collar and elbow tie up. And Iron Sheik says, did you hear about Brody? How's he doing? Tony Atlas says that the doctor says he's going to be fine. He says, I can't believe that fan did it. He said, I knew these fans were dangerous, but not like this. And Tony Atlas again says, it was Invader. It was Gonzalez that did it. And Sheik shoots back up and is in shock and awe. And he immediately went into a tirade about Gonzalez. They had to cut the match short because the Sheik apparently left to go to the back. And now, keep in mind, Tony Atlas is already speaking to everybody saying it's Gonzalez. What are we talking about? Shout out to Colin there in the chat. Appreciate you stopping by. Glad you can make it for the live stream. We're talking about Bruiser Brody. Hope you're doing well, Colin. Keep in mind, Tony Atlas is talking here. He's telling the truth. But Savio Vega, also known as TNT at that time, Savio Vega, he warns Bruiser Brody. He's telling Brody, I got your bags ready. And Bruiser Brody's saying, well, what do you mean? He said, I got your bags ready. After the match, don't go to your room. Meaning his hotel room. And again, Bruiser Brody, or excuse me, not Bruiser Brody, but Tony Atlas is saying, don't go to my room. He says they're looking for you. You're talking. So the target has already been on his back. Tony Atlas is a marked man because he's talking. He urges him, don't go back to your hotel room. I have your bags ready after the matchup. Colin says dealing with a sinus infection, but otherwise doing decent. How's the stream going so far? It's going well so far, Colin. Hopefully the sinus infection is something you can kick out of and get rid of that quickly. But hey, otherwise we're glad to have you here, buddy. So during the night, after the matchup, Tony Atlas gets his bags, splits. Because at this point, he may be next. Tony Atlas says that he grabs his bags and he walks the beach throughout the duration of the night. He walks the beach. At some points, he falls asleep, but he wakes up when he hears a noise. Because he doesn't know. Keep in mind, Carlos Colon, Victor Quinones, and Jose Gonzalez all were a huge part of that promotion. So you know that they know people. So who's to say he doesn't send them out there to get Mr. USA Tony Atlas? At some point in the night, it's discovered that Bruiser Brody doesn't make it. The wounds were too much. He was not able to kick out. And a wrestling legend was taken. Literally in the locker room prior to a show. And for some reason, some people were covering it up. And yet only one man was willing to stand up and say, that's not the truth. This is what happened. That morning, following the demise of Bruiser Brody, it's announced to the other wrestlers in the hotel. They have a meeting. Of course, as I mentioned, individuals like Dutch Mantel, Abdullah the Butcher, Tony Atlas, etc. are in attendance for this meeting where they discover that their peer, that their friend, Brody had passed. What's interesting here is it contradictory. Tony Atlas says that Abdullah the Butcher was there. Upon interviewing Abdullah the Butcher during the Dark Side of the Ring episode, Abdullah says, I wasn't there. I wasn't there at no meeting. Maybe they had a meeting without me. I'm not denying there was a meeting, but I was not at a meeting in the hotel. Tony Atlas says, why? Why would he lie? Because the producers, the filmmakers of that episode would tell Tony Atlas, well, Abdullah's saying that never happened. That he wasn't at a meeting. No hesitation. Tony Atlas says he's lying. He's lying. He was at that meeting. It's then discovered Abdullah the Butcher owned 5% of World Wrestling Council. He was a minority owner. And if you're the minority owner, are you going to want to implicate or incriminate someone like a Jose Gonzalez, who was a prominent figure in that promotion? Do you want to ruffle some feathers? Probably not. So as minority owner, he's denying this? And again, Tony Atlas is why? I was just there. I saw it happen. But people are acting like it never did. After this, they place Gonzalez under arrest. But he's able to place bail. So he's out the same day. It's a lack of communication not only by the authorities, who apparently didn't give it the proper attention that it required, believing that it was just a silly professional wrestling storyline, that they thought, oh, Bruiser Brody was killed, the character, but not Frank Goodish, the man. He would be released on bail. He pleaded self-defense. Why? Because Bruiser Brody is portrayed as an out-of-control character who took his liberties with anybody and everybody. So naturally, upon the optics, upon taking a step back and looking at the characters at hand, yeah, it makes sense that he would want to have self-defense against someone as crazy as a Bruiser Brody. He pleads self-defense. And also, it's important to recognize that no weapon was recovered. No one was ever able to recover the weapon that was utilized. Never found. He pled in self-defense. Individuals like a Dutch Mantel, like a Tony Atlas, who were there when the crime had occurred, they received their subpoenas to attend the trial, to testify in the trial. They received notice following the verdict. It came 10 days after the verdict was named. So naturally, hey, no one is showing up for the trial to share their testimonies, to testify as to why they believe that Gonzalez is guilty. So Gonzalez was acquitted. He was successfully acquitted because there was nothing against him. And how odd is that? That the people that were there that could have gave a compelling case as to the imprisonment of Jose Gonzalez, of Invader, did not receive their notice until after the fact, when it was already over. It was too late. He basically got away with the murder. One, because the authorities and the justice system, at least in Puerto Rico, did not do their due diligence when it came to the case. And as if that wasn't a miscarriage of justice in itself, 2 years later, in another promotion, Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, they would run a controversial angle where a now babyface Jose Gonzalez would suffer a stabbing attack from one of their heels. No shame. No shame. Bruiser Brody goes down as one of the greatest big men in professional wrestling. Truly a titan of hardcore wrestling. Individuals like Mick Foley have patterned their style after Bruiser Brody. He would enter the WWE Hall of Fame in 2019 as a part of their legacy wing, honoring those of the past. He's also survived by his wife Barbara and his son Jeff. And for those that knew Bruiser Brody, not only knew him as, again, a huge, tremendous figure in the sport of professional wrestling, but they remember him as the man who loved his family, who loved this business, and unfortunately not a lot of people showed love to him in his final days. A lot of controversy surrounding the demise of Bruiser Brody. Was it business? Was it planned? That's for you to decide. But the fact of the matter is, it is a damn shame that people did not stick up for Bruiser Brody as much as they could have. Nor did the defense or the justice system do so as well. A man walked free, while the other never walked again. It's a shame. Bruiser Brody's story is a harrowing tale of the business that you and I have grown to love. It's important to recognize that these men and women are just that at the end of the day. They're men and women. They're more than just these larger-than-life characters that you and I watch on a weekly, maybe daily basis, depending on what promotion you're watching. And to see the legacy that he's left behind, I really shudder to think what could have been if his life wasn't taken. Could he have returned to the WWE? Could he have been at a WrestleMania? He won world titles across the NWA, but never in prominent promotions like in WCW or WWF at that time. To see the level of growth that the business has endured, has enjoyed since the days of Bruiser Brody, is a testament to the path that was paved by individuals like Brody. That's why I think it's important to have these discussions about those of the past so they're not forgotten. So the contributions that he has provided for this business do not go unnoticed. If it wasn't for a guy like Brody, who's to say we have a Mick Foley? Now, granted, I'm sure Mick Foley would have found his way into the WWE, into pro wrestling. But it was that inspiration that he drew from Bruiser Brody that allowed us to become so enamored with the act of Cactus Jack, with that of Mankind, and with that of Dude Love. Colin says, I never knew of Bruiser Brody before tonight, as I'm really new to wrestling as a whole, and your sharing this has made me want to research him more, and I agree that it's important to discuss this. Man, shout out to Colin, because that's ultimately the goal of this. Because there are a lot of pro wrestling fans here who are new to the game. Pro wrestling right now is at a peak where it hasn't experienced this in quite some time. You guys have heard me time and time again say that it is the most popular it has been in the last quarter century. So we're going to have a lot of people who are maybe unfamiliar with the early days of pro wrestling. And this is my opportunity, my love letter to the business that has entertained me and has gotten me through a lot of times to give back and say, you know what? I want to share these stories. I want to be able to, if anything, kind of educate people on the history of pro wrestling. And if it is something that interests you enough to do further research upon, then I've already did my part. Then I've already had the pleasure and the honor to give you a set of information, and now you have hooked and want to look into it. Hey man, that's my contributions to the business. But I do recommend anyone who's interested in these type of tales, we do have our Thursday live streams. We do have those polls that go up every weekend. So that's your opportunity to place a vote, to decide, hey man, I want to talk about this, or you know what, I'm not really familiar with this one. I would like to know more. Join us on the live streams. We talk about pro wrestling. We talk about the history. Of course, the history, but also modern times as well. I've always said these live streams may have been dictated by me, but the topics at hand are really determined by you. So at any time you guys have any questions, comments, any ideas for topics of discussion, whether it's a video or a live stream, you guys already know. Drop them in the comments, drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to accommodate everyone at this point. Constance, I actually got into wrestling in a rather unconventional way. Also, I love history in general, so for me, that's a huge part of me being in this fandom. There's a lot of history, man. I've had a lot of friends who have kind of fallen out of wrestling, or some people who just never watched it, and they said, you know, where do I start? I would love to get into it, but what year do I start? And I'm always like, you know what? Just start. Just start watching it now. And naturally, you're going to be attracted to a story. You're going to become a fan of someone. So then you kind of latch onto that and work your way backwards. That's my best way to do it, because it's difficult to say, you know what, start watching it from 1987. Start watching in 1969. It's like, because it's a lot of years to cover. Start watching and then work your way back. Savi says Bruiser Brody had great matches against The Undertaker, also known as Texas Red. The Undertaker always said Brody was great. And that's what I mean, because towards the tail end of his career, he's now crossing paths with some of the stars of the 90s that we all know. Some people may not know Bruiser Brody, but odds are your favorite pro wrestler in the 90s, or your favorite pro wrestler, probably worked with him or was a fan of Bruiser Brody. And that's why I always think about, man, what could have been? Could we have seen The Undertaker as we know and love versus an older, more experienced Bruiser Brody? Well, Sweat says, my best friend and I got to see Brody at the Sportatorium, Texas Stadium, and the Cotton Bowl. We were blown away when he was killed. Yeah, when he was killed in PR. It's a crazy thing, because a lot of times when we hear about the demise of pro wrestling, it's always about health, heart attacks. It's about overdosage, accidents. Very rarely is it at the hands of another individual. Very rarely is it at the hands of a peer, of another pro wrestler. And it's truly, when I say the word spectacular, I don't mean like in a positive manner, but it's truly amazing to think all this had occurred and this man was acquitted and basically got away scot-free. As Colin alluded to in terms of history, it's important to go back, not only in terms of pro wrestling, but just in general. It's good to go back and learn about the history of just sport, movies, whatever tickles your fancy, whatever it is that you are interested in, you learn from the history. And it kind of influences the future. And a guy like Bruiser Brody, at the very least, has earned the distinction to have been recognized as one of the trailblazers in this business. So who are we to not talk about him anymore? He may not be here with us, literally, but the legacy carries on. So long as his story is being passed generation upon generation, you can't even get mad at that. Colin says, I just got asking my friend who was born in PR how much her dad remembers of Bruiser Brody and the case, and she said a fair bit. Since he experienced it firsthand, I hope to talk with him about it. I would love to know that too, because it's another thing. We talk about history. So, for example, full disclosure, I used to work within a retirement community, and they talked about these life incidents like JFK, Martin Luther King, and for someone like me who was never around for that, learned it in the textbooks, seen it in movies and documentaries, I'm very fascinated to know what was it like for an individual firsthand who was there, who was around, who heard the breaking news, who had to hear it on the radio or saw it on the television. What was the reaction of the world? What was the overall general population's reaction? And I'm sure in future generations, the things that we've experienced in modern times, people will be asking the same thing. But I am very interested to see what was that like? Because, for example, for me, finding about guys like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, very, monumental moments in my development, not only as a young kid, but as a pro wrestling fan. And the Bruiser Brody one is one I'm interested in. Josue says the book his wife wrote is an excellent read and provides great insight into his personal and home life. I would love to read it. I would love to. Because it also provides another side of the man. A lot of times when it comes to these pro wrestling documentaries, very pro wrestling heavy, so we're getting the testimonies of his peers, guys like a Tony Atlas and a Dutch Mantel, and they know him for Bruiser Brody and for being the wrestler, but also the family man. But to hear it from someone in his personal life, like his wife, that would be interesting as well, because now you're going to get an even more in-depth look at him. Colin says, I used to volunteer at an old folks' home, and for me, the joy was always talking to the residents about their reactions to when big historic events happened. Exactly. And you can tell, too, when you're speaking to them about it, and they kind of see that you have that genuine interest in that topic, at least from what I've experienced. They light up like, whoa, like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to share this story with you. Like, oh my God. It becomes such a revelation for them, because it's like sometimes people don't have the patience to listen to these stories. And for them, it's like, whoa, like someone actually wants to hear this. So it goes both ways. We, as, the younger members of society, are getting to learn from our elder statesmen, and they get to bestow their knowledge upon the next generation. Colin says, what's the book called? Yeah, absolutely. If you have the name of that, go ahead and drop that in the chat. That's something I'd be interested in. Oh man, shout out to Gabs. Thank you so much for the super chat, Gabs. The MVP of the live streams. Man, I'm really glad that you enjoyed the story. Because that's really what I look forward to when it comes to these live streams, is being able to share these stories with people who maybe aren't too familiar with them. And for those who are familiar with them, it's a great opportunity to include them into the story and provide their testimony and provide their insight into the topic at hand. Because for me, I may know of the story, but hey, maybe I don't have a strong knowledge of it. I might know generally. So to see that and to know that you guys are enjoying these stories, that's awesome. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. Colin says, you're a really good storyteller, honestly, and if you start a history channel, I'd also subscribe to that. Hey, I appreciate that. I pride myself in that because growing up as a kid, I'm not going to lie to you, maybe sometimes you see it. But there have been times where I personally have felt like maybe I have a little bit of a speech impediment. I'm not going to diagnose myself there. But sometimes I kind of misspeak, or I might stutter sometimes. So I've always been very self-conscious about the way I speak and the way I express myself with words. And I've always loved storytelling, whether it's in a movie, whether it's in music, any form of media, there's a story to be told. See what I mean? Sometimes my mouth is moving faster than my mind. But the point is, I appreciate the kind words. I enjoy sharing these stories. There have been times where I very much enjoy telling these behind-the-scenes stories. But then there are other times where I'm like, hey, maybe I'll start another series where I'm going to just encapsulate an entire feud, for example, something we've seen on screen. So it'll give you both a sense of what's going on in front of the camera and behind the camera. So I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. Again, look for those polls every Sunday is pretty much the day that we put up those polls in terms of what we're going to be discussing every Thursday. Whole Sweat provides, Brody, the triumph and tragedy of wrestling's awesome. Awesome. I actually want to write that down, and you guys are going to see me here live on stream take notes for myself, because I actually very much would be interested in that. And that's another thing too. I've debated about. I have recently I purchased my own book. It's over my shoulder. There's just one problem. It's the book by Brian Gewirtz, who was a longtime writer for the WWE. It provides a look behind the scenes in terms of the writing process of the WWE, and so I'm very much interested. Maybe sharing some of those with you guys. Maybe reading an excerpt here and there. I know we did a poll one time where there was interest in there, so maybe down the line we'll be able to do that. Muhammad is happy late on a late Thursday night. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm hoping that you're doing the same and that the week is treating you well. Hope so. Constance, I do have a mild speech impediment, a very mild nervous stutter. I get it. And it goes away if I'm in front of a mic, which is rather interesting. Okay, so right on. Muhammad, it's wonderful to be here because it's going to be awesome. Appreciate that, Muhammad. I'm a bit under the weather. I hope you get better. I really do. I was just under the weather not too long ago as well, so hopefully, you kick that off to the curb pretty soon. Constance, I actually had seen the book in your background and was going to ask about it in a comment as the cover got my attention. Yeah, so it's Brian Gewirtz. Like I said, he was a longtime writer for the WWE, really during the time of like 1999 to 2015, maybe, give or take a couple years. And he doesn't work there no more. He's actually one of the right-hand men to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for his $7 production company. But again, very prominent writer who had a hand in a lot of the big storylines in the mid to late 2000s. Not autocorrect with me. Yeah, man, autocorrect be doing that. I'm curious, because usually when we have... Let me see something quick here. I'm curious because usually when we have some interactions in the chat, like for again, shout out to Gabs again for that super chat. Sometimes we get an animation for that and it didn't pop up. Salvi says, are you planning on uploading your content in audio form on the Apple Podcast app or Spotify? So I used to do it on Spotify. There was like early episodes of the podcast on Spotify, but there was no traction there. Because I can see like who's watching from where, and there was like little to nobody listening on Spotify. Granted, it was very early on in the development of the podcast, so it was early, and I took it off of it, and I wanted to focus just on the YouTube aspect. And then over time, if it was able to gain enough traction and gain enough attention, then potentially bringing it back onto Spotify, maybe uploading all the other episodes too. But again, no one was really listening to it on Spotify. If that's something that people would be interested into, absolutely, I can go ahead and place them in audio form. But it used to be. Joys of being a streamer and OBS not paying nice. Yeah, you know what? But it's the only time it's given me an issue. Because the other streams we've been doing, there was the first time we used it and like the volume I didn't adjust properly, so it was like really loud. Last stream was better, and this time it didn't go off for some reason, even though I had the settings for it to go off. But yeah, I do use OBS. And then in terms of like the graphics here, obviously you can see powered by Own3D, which again has been working wonderfully. It's just for some reason it didn't go off today, because I enjoy being able to share that with you guys, because whenever someone either subscribes or becomes a member or is kind enough to send in a donation, kind of little music or audio plays in the background, and I like it. It gives a little bit more flavor, gives a little bit more personality to it as well, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I get tired of hearing my own voice. So obviously, one of my favorite stories from Brian is when he bought, dude, that's the first chapter. Wrestler's Court's literally the first chapter. But even then, someone else needs to donate to see if it works. Come on, guys. Oh, hey, I appreciate that, Gabs. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure I have, because I have this setting up. That's weird. I'm hoping that it played off onto your guys' screen, because that is the noise it should have been making. See, San Fran heard it. Anyone here believe in Joe Hendry? You already know, man. We already know we believe in Joe Hendry. But no, honestly, it really does like warm my heart to know, wow, that noise was for me. It was. It was. That's the thing, though. That's what should have played. So I think it was odd that it didn't go off. It was supposed to be, but it didn't go off. But to hear people who are very invested in the stories, and I'm going to tell you right now, of the compliments that I have been so fortunate to have received upon doing these streams, upon creating these videos, to be told that I'm a good storyteller. And again, I mean, maybe I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Totally fine. But to be told that, man, that's like the biggest validation. Because that's all this ever is for me, is telling stories. When a story is told well, and you're allowed that chance to invest in it, whether it's on an emotional standpoint or whatever the case may be, whenever you're able to lend yourself to a story, that's how you know it's doing well. So, big shout out there. That meant the world. What is the status of Raw on Netflix? 10 years, buddy. It's gonna be. It was a 10-year deal, I believe. But yeah, no, they're not going anywhere. And given the amount of money that they played into that, I don't think they're gonna let it go. It might just be there permanently. You're not our cup of tea. You're our water. We got to hear these stories like CM Punk's sermon at the 2010 Rumble. That's a crazy shout. Hey, if I was able to, I would renew my channel membership. I would because I believe in what you're doing, and I wish I could. So thanks again to whoever gave me a gifted one. That's the thing, man, Colin. So that was during one of our live streams. We had the opportunity to gift away some memberships. And thankfully, YouTube is gracious enough to give us that chance to, hey, just gift out to random people. So it's not like I selected anybody in particular. I don't play favorites. It would just randomly provided it out to other members that were subscribed to the channel. So you were one of those that was selected, and Colin, hey, I appreciate the kind words and allowing to entertain you on a Thursday evening here for a live stream. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us on the live stream. I saw your comment earlier, and I did see about the ECW video. I would love to do something like that. So I'll be working on that and maybe having it out by the weekend, if not next week for sure. So I love the ECW idea. And it's really awesome because there's so many things to talk about and for me to wrap my brain around. So when someone else kind of presents an idea that's like, whoa, that wasn't even on my radar, you know I'm gonna jump at it because it's something you're interested in. Odds are I'm interested in it too. So keep an eye out for that. I will be doing something about ECW and WWE. Muhammad says, I heard it wasn't successful lately with everybody that is going on. I don't know. I haven't heard that. I heard it was very successful. But I mean, granted, it's the internet and anybody can say whatever, right? Clearly, I'm here. I'm saying whatever. But no, from what I've seen, it's been successful. And I also enjoy the show itself. I don't feel like the show creatively has taken a dip. I know some people were critical of that first episode of Raw. But the numbers don't lie. And it spells success for WWE, I think. And pretty soon, everything's going to be moving to Netflix. Because I know in North America, here with us in the States, Peacock is still up. So all the previous content from like all the other years, still on Peacock. The premium live events are on Peacock in North America specifically. So I don't know. No, you didn't. No, you didn't, Gabs. Gabs. That's goated. Man.
Love this stream. Peeped CGG.
Yeah, everyone put up an acknowledgement for Gabs. Shout out to Gabs. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. From what I've seen, it has been successful. Also, numbers are always, man, I still can't get over it. Shout out to Gabs. Numbers are always fluid, 100%. So it's kind of hard to judge. It's a good like little meter to judge by, but it's not like gospel. You can't take it for what it is. Also, as a Canadian, I'm thankful I get access to the whole catalog and whatever old stuff. Honestly. And that's what I'm afraid of too, because for example, Monday Night Raw isn't available like on the Peacock no more. It's all on Netflix, and it's only selective seasons and certain episodes. So we have to wait for those all to come back onto Netflix. But I knew it was a good idea to buy all the wrestling DVDs I have, because I have maybe over 100 wrestling DVDs. You can see some of you over here, over my shoulder. These are just general movies, but like towards the bottom, pro wrestling DVDs. You can even see them behind me over here by my clock. There's another stand of pro wrestling movies. I knew it was going to be a smart idea to buy these hardcovers, these hard copies rather. But pretty soon they're all going to be in the same spot. Netflix is what it looks like. And I think that starts in 2026. I think this is the last year that Peacock is working with the WWE, at least in North America. I'm trying to see with these settings, because I haven't adjusted any of the settings, so I don't know why it's not popping on the screen. Shout out to Salvi, also acknowledging Gabs, the MVP of the stream. I actually have started to get my friend in Germany into wrestling, just because she mentioned she used to see Ludwig Kaiser at a pub. He'd go there after his shows. Isn't that crazy? To see like someone from TV, like a pro wrestler. I mean, maybe not pro wrestling, but just a celebrity in general, out in public. Like, dude, that's crazy. But they're going to be going to Germany, I believe, in March. As far as I remember, I believe it's in March for Monday Night Raw, the lead into WrestleMania. This year's Survivor Series should do War Games with teams WWE versus TNA, Cody versus Joe Hendry. That would be cool. But I hear a lot of chatter about people wanting like a Worlds Collide type of an event, and I feel like it'll probably be more like an NXT TNA thing, just because the collaboration has already been there. I would love to see a WWE versus TNA, just because quite frankly, there's more star power on the main roster. But I think we're probably headed towards more of an NXT TNA. Colin says, and so far my attempts have been successful. That's awesome. She wasn't too enthusiastic at first. Showed her McFoley and Mr. Sacco, and that's what hooked her. Isn't that crazy? There's always someone that is there's someone for everybody, and that's what I love about pro wrestling. There's always someone for everybody, and if Mick Foley's the gateway, not a bad way to get into it. I've always said that the Hell in a Cell match in '98, that's one of those matches that like, hey, if I'm going to be showing a friend who's really not familiar with the business, I'm showing that one as one of the matches. And Mr. Sacco, I mean, dude, come on, who doesn't love Mr. Sacco? Muhammad says, what do you think of AEW Dynamite last night? Another episode of Dynamite. They're doing the lead-in into, their Australia show, which should be interesting. I was a big fan of a few other segments. I thought Ricochet versus Swerve was fun. Ricochet winning, I think, was probably the right call because you still want to give him heat. You want to give him a little bit of that momentum to build up ever since he's been feuding with Swerve Strickland. Swerve's kind of been, big brothering him, kind of like shunning him, essentially. And so to see Ricochet get that win, although was a surprise, I enjoyed it. I liked the Toni Storm versus Mariah May segment where she dressed up as Mariah May, had a pretty good impersonation of the glamorous one as well. That should be a great match for Grand Slam Australia. Then we had Brody King. I nearly wanted to say Bruiser Brody. Brody King and Buddy had faced off against Don Callis' boys, which I thought was interesting because I thought, okay, we're looking at, the Hounds of Hell, Brody King and Buddy, kind of building them back up. We want to build them up some momentum ever since Malachi Black has split. And you put him up against Takeshita and Fletcher, who have a match against Omega and Ospreay. And immediately I'm thinking, well, do we really want either of these teams to lose? Because if you make Takeshita and Fletcher, if you have them take this L, it kind of decreases their momentum heading into this big match. Why should I even worry if they can't beat the Hounds of Hell? And then if the Hounds of Hell lose, then it's like, well, why are we building them up? They're just going to lose in one of their first matches since repackaging. But they run the whole deal where someone comes in and they interfere and they cost the Hounds of Hell the match, which makes sense. I got no problem with it after that because it makes sense. He has an issue with Okada. Okada's going to come out and do his business and interfere. Hurt Business as the tag champions. Love the Hurt Business. Or the Hurt Syndicate, sorry. Hurt Business is what they were known as WWE. Love the Hurt Syndicate. MVP, Shelton, Bobby. Those are my boys. Love it. Colin says, I'm avoiding showing her Extreme stuff so far because she tried out some of his Cactus Jack stuff. Wasn't for her. Okay. Really like some of the Mankind and Dude Love stuff, though. Yeah, no, that's cool. I think the Mankind stuff, the early stuff was interesting, like in '96 when he debuted. I'm a big fan of his match against Shawn Michaels in Your House War Games. Mind Games, 1996. That matchup between him and Shawn, one of my favorites. That early iteration of Mankind where he was like a tortured soul and would be down in the boiler room and kept to himself, had the rat with him, as Jim Cornette would probably remember. So I think that's probably the smart move, is to kind of ease her in. If she's not into it, hey, don't force her. But Mankind is one of the greatest of all time, for sure. Colin says, my friend sharing the pipe bomb with me 2 years ago was the gateway for me. He showed it to me because something I was working on at the time read similar to it. Then I started studying promos, and that's what really, really hooked me. I think it's so important to recognize that there are people out there who like to emphasize the in-ring stuff, which granted, absolutely. Pro wrestling is wrestling. It's in the middle of the ropes. But something that is almost as equally important as promos is the storytelling. Because if you're not able to tell a good story, as we mentioned earlier in the stream, how am I going to get invested? You can do all these nice moves for all the live long day, but if I don't care about the person doing the moves, I don't think it means as much. So the fact that CM Punk and the Pipe Bomb was your gateway, that's awesome. Because CM Punk is my second favorite wrestler of all time. Because of his in-ring style, because of his personality, because of his promos, for sure. And I think he's genuinely one of the greatest of all time. In this modern era, he has influenced so much of what we have seen. Punk and the Pipe Bomb is a moment in time. So the fact that that was your gateway, not a bad way to start off, man. You're kind of setting the bar really high though when it comes to promos, because I think he's one of the best on the mic. Starting promos, and that's what really hooked me. Yeah, promos are awesome. I almost look forward to promos more than the matchup. I love them. Don't get me wrong. Love the matchup. Love the matchup. But the promo is what gets me. You know, that's what hooks me. If you tell me, okay, so-and-so is going to wrestle, okay, cool. But then if there's a story to it, there's bad blood, there's intent, oh man, count me in. Count me in. Alex, shout out to Alex in the chat. Oh, sorry, I skipped over Salvi. I'll get back to Alex. Salvi, would you ever consider going on the Jericho cruise? Looks like it's been fun, but I'm not a fan of going on a cruise. I've lived in Florida for over 20 years now and never had the want to go on one. Hey, I'm a fan of Jericho. I can't swim. I'm not taking that chance. You know, I'm not wishing on anybody. But you'll probably never catch me on a cruise. I'm not taking that chance. Would I ever go? Probably not. Probably not. I'm not taking that chance. But I hear it's a fun show. I hear a lot of great things happen, and they have great stars. And so for those who do go, I hope they enjoy it. Thanks for the highlight, the WCCW wrestling legend, Bruiser Brody. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important to recognize these people who aren't as talked about as much of the other guys. You have your Hogans, you have your Andres. You know, those guys get talked about enough. Love Andre. Hogan, we know where I stand. So to talk about a guy like Bruiser Brody, something different, I'm into it. Kevin said, my world fell apart when someone told me the pipe bomb was scripted. Why would you tell me that? Okay, to be fair, it was like a work shoot. You know, from what I understood, maybe I haven't read the same thing, but from what I understood, it was more of like a, hey, we're going to give you a mic, say what you want. And I'm sure he had to get some of those okayed. It would make more sense for him to get some of them okay. You're not going to give someone a live mic and say whatever. But I would like to think that he kind of went with it and spoke from the heart for the most part. The whole reason it has aura is because I thought it wasn't. I would like to think part of it wasn't, but the majority of it, he had to get it okayed, I'm sure. Colin says the promos are probably my favorite part. I liked Penta's first match, then saw his promo. That made Penta my favorite guy, with Punk now my number 2. And see, that's just a testament to it. Penta, or as I have always liked to call him, Pentagon Jr., was a star. I mean, he still is a star, but my point is, he went to Impact, AEW, Mexico. The talent is there. The in-ring ability has always been there. But you put him on the grand stage of the WWE. You give him a microphone. And you let him speak from the heart. You see his kids in the front row crying. And you hear him, again, from the heart, speak about how this is my dream. This is where I want to be. And how much it meant to him. Well, damn it, I'm a sucker. Because when I hear that kind of stuff, immediately I'm locked in. And I want to see him succeed. I really do. I can't wait for Ray Phoenix also to show up. Because those boys can go. For some of those in the chat here who have not seen the Lucha Brothers, if you have Max, go on to Max, look up some of the AEW matches. They had some of the best matches against the Young Bucks, like the ladder match, the cage match, both at different all-outs. They also had a matchup against each other. You know, a one-on-one matchup. I believe it was a tournament for the AEW World Championship. Penta versus Phoenix, man. I love that matchup. Muhammad says you don't want to end up like Shad Gaspard. Rest in peace to Shad. Rest in peace to Shad, man. Recently saw Ray versus Penta. Lucha Libre. Dude. And the fact that they were starting the Rumble I called it, man. You can ask my family. I called it. I saw Ray, and I'm like, they're gonna put Penta. It's gonna be Penta, and then Penta comes out. We get that awesome showdown between two of the best masked wrestlers in the world. That's awesome. And then of course Penta kind of, he kind of hit the ground 90 seconds in, but we ignore that. We'll go ahead and ignore that. Colin says, "Forgive my ignorance, but I'm not familiar with Shad Gaspard. Can you tell me more in detail?" Oh man, so Shad Gaspard, I'll tell you a little bit about that, Colin. So Shad Gaspard was one half of the tag team Crime Time. He and JTG were a popular tag team around 2006 to 2008. He had wrestled with the WWE for about 5 years until ultimately he was released. Now, at one point, forgive me, I don't recall the specific year, but he went out to the beach with his family and his son was drowning. And Shad Gaspard went into the water, saved his son, but ultimately Shad didn't make it. So he sacrificed his own life to save his son, and he drowned essentially. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame as a member of the Warrior Award due to his courageous acts. And again, like I said earlier about Bruiser Brody, a person really shows you who they really are in their final moments. And for him to lay down his life for his son, I think is something that any father would really do. And so mad respect to Shad Gaspard. And don't even worry about the ignorance, man. That's what I enjoy, Colin, is here in this live stream, in this community of the J area. Everyone has been very respectful and conscientious about the different levels of expertise when it comes to pro wrestling. Hey, if you're not really familiar with something as much as others, we haven't had anybody kind of put anyone down. It's been very respectful, all inclusive. I'm so proud of the community that we've been building here on YouTube. You guys are the best. You guys rock, first of all. Kevin says, "Yo, Jose, do you watch Lucha Libre?" I'm a fan of I see Sanford says he watched Nacho Libre. We got taken out of school early to watch Nacho Libre. But on occasion, I will confess, I watched the big three. TNA. Something fell in the background. TNA, AEW, WWE. Those have been the sweet spots. Growing up as a kid, they used to show AAA and CMLL on TV. So I would watch it every now and then. I remember seeing a guy like La Parca on CMLL. I don't get to watch as much because they don't really have the provider here for what we watch it on. But on occasion, I will watch it. I'm a big fan of like the old ECW and WCW, where you had guys like Psychosis and Super Crazy. Shout out to the Mexicals. Juventud Guerrera, Eddie, Ray, like all those Hispanic luchadores who came in the 90s. I'm all over it. My buddy who got me into wrestling spammed me with the Ray Phoenix and Lucha Bro matches after I said I liked Penta. My mind was blown. It's tremendous. The things those boys are able to do, dude. So happy to see guys like the Motor City Machine Guns in the WWE. And I can't wait to see both Lucha Brothers together in WWE. That's surely going to be a treat. If WWE fans are impressed with Penta, they're going to love Phoenix because a lot of people think he's better. I've seen a lot of people argue that Phoenix is the better brother between the two. Got nothing but love for Penta. But there are certain things that Phoenix does that he can't, and vice versa. But man, get ready for Phoenix. Alex says the last live unscripted promo was PCP smashing TNA, digital media belt at GCW. That was 100% real. Got a lot of heat for that, huh? PCO got some heat for that. In this world of pro wrestling, sometimes you can't determine what's a work and what's a shoot. So part of me was like, no, that had to be a work, right? Like they wouldn't just do that. But apparently it was legit. And so there's a bit of heat on PCO. I don't believe he's re-signed with them. I believe his contract expired. So he's probably going to be with GCW since he did that. Muhammad said, that's why I don't like swimming in the beach. Dude, I can't swim in general. And honestly, at this point in my life, I don't think I'm going to learn. Colin says, I really think ECW should return. Under the Netflix umbrella, I think they could really use that as a unique selling point. I mean, in terms of the branding, yeah, ECW will always be a selling point. I mean, they had an NXT show from the old NXT or from the old ECW arena. So the branding is still there. Will they do it? I don't think so. And I don't want to get too into detail because I do want to make that video call in. But all I'll say is that it's kind of already been done. And we remember how that happened. But I want to discuss that more in detail in a future video. So I'll try to hold my tongue when it comes to that. What did you think of Penta's blue outfit during the Rumble, by the way? I was a fan. I thought it could have worked a bit better, but I thought it looked cool too. I was a fan. It was cool. You know, the teal. I like blue. I mean, my two favorite colors are red and blue. I think his best gear probably, though, is like the classic black and white where it looks like La Parca or LA Park, depending where you knew him from. I definitely think that the blue was nice. I wasn't mad at it. If I was local, I'd teach you how to swim. I used to be a swimming instructor, actually. Dude, what don't you know, man? That's awesome. That's awesome. But I mean, at this point, I don't even know if I can learn. They say the best age to teach is like when they're babies because their natural instincts kick in. I've seen a bunch of videos. And actually, I'd love your take on that since you were a former swimming instructor. What's your take on that, classic tradition of just throwing the kid in the water and having them swim for themselves? Because me personally, if I had a kid, I don't think I would be able to do that and just dump them in the water and watch them, swim. It should be left to the professional instructors for sure. I would never do it on my own. But even then, man, I don't know. I don't know if I want to risk that. Just dumping them in the water and having them learn like that. What are your thoughts on Hulk Hogan's recent appearance on the Pat McAfee show about being booed in Los Angeles? Hulk Hogan's delusional. If you guys haven't seen that clip of me discussing Hulk Hogan and his many lies, I'm not shy about it. I'm not a Hogan guy. I never was. Not because of his political stance. That has nothing to do with it. One, it started from as a wrestling fan. I just never got the character. Wasn't a fan. I was a Macho Man and a Piper fan. Hogan fought Shawn in 2005. You better believe I was cheering for Shawn. He fought Randy Orton in 2006. You better believe I was going for Randy Orton. Never was a fan. And then on top of that, his personal life. I mean, that's only, more fuel to the fire. Not a fan. But his recent, yes, I see San Fran 5, Iron Sheik better than Hogan. His recent appearance on McAfee. He was saying how oh yeah, no, I expected to be booed. Yeah, I'm sure you did. But everyone keeps contributing it to his political stance. I don't want to get political. That's not what this channel is about. Everyone is entitled to their political stance. Totally fine. So long as we're respectful with one another, that's what matters most to me. Treat me well as a person, I'll treat you well as a person. With that being said, it's not a political thing because Undertaker is also conservative and they didn't boo him. They didn't boo The Undertaker, everyone cheered him. They boo Hogan because of his personal issues, and I also believe in because that tired old shtick of, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, it doesn't resonate with today. It's the same reason why they booed Cena. That, 100% baby face, clean cut, doesn't work anymore. We're very lucky that Cody's really over as a baby face, because if it was anybody else in any other era, probably would have been booed by now. But he's very disingenuous because then he talks about how, if they would have let me, I would have turned into Hollywood Hulk Hogan and I would have turned heel and whatever. But because it was sponsoring his Real American beer, he had to be a baby face. It's like, dude, people don't boo you for the reasons that you think. You're just not a good guy. So I'm not a fan of Hogan. If you're a fan of the character, again, totally fine. Totally fine. But me, was never a fan of the character, and I'm less fan of the man. I will say, I'm a big fan of Punk because he's been holding no punches when it comes to Hogan. That promo to, about the Royal Rumble on the Raw prior, where he was running down everybody, talking about Sami Zayn's not on my level, talking about Roman Reigns and throwing him out. And then he talks about, I'll throw Hulk Hogan out the Royal Rumble and kill Hulkamania once and for all. Dude, That got a big pop out of me. I was into it. I was into it. And then Taker, real quick, I'm gonna wrap up that on Hogan. And then Taker on his podcast even talked about how, like, everyone kind of gets what they deserve, essentially. So he's not a fan of Hogan either, it seems like. And I don't blame him. After what happened in the 1991 Survivor Series where Hogan accused him of hurting him, even though he wasn't even close to being hurt, I would look at him a little crazy too if I was The Undertaker. Oh yeah, and then Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was another one that was vocal about Hulk Hogan's, little relationship with the audience. Basically the same thing. You get what you deserve. And if you take responsibility for your actions, maybe people would forgive you, but I don't see it happening. Let's see what we got. Colin says blue and purple are my favorite colors. Nice. The most shocking thing that I ever seen as a champion of Ring of Honor, signing his WWE contract on the Ring of Honor belt. He got major heat for that, yeah. CM Punk, dude. Was always one to beat to his own drum, and that's something I super respect about Punk. Wasn't afraid to stray away from the crowd. Was a rebel, essentially. And when Punk was really getting hot, like in 2011, that was my teenage years. So when you're a teenager, you want to be able to, latch onto someone who's kind of rebellious. That guy, that anti-establishment guy. People in the 90s had Austin. And Punk was my guy. So that Ring of Honor stunt where he signs the contract on the title. Yep. Sanford says, I have an Iron Sheik action figure. I can confirm this. Colin says, holding him, and it took him 12 weeks to get comfortable. And it took a lot of effort from me. What ultimately got him comfy? Me making a silly face while under the water. He jumped from his dad's shoulder and was swimming 5 minutes later. Oh, wow. See, that's what I'm talking about, dude. Because it's like the innate instinct, right? That they start kicking and swimming. But I mean, holding him would make sense. But I'm like, that's the way I would expect it. You're holding him, you're guiding him, letting the baby or the child in question get comfortable with the water. But I've seen these videos where they just dump him. They dump him like it's a chicken wing and ranch. You just dip that thing in there. I can't do it. You got to be supervised. I'm very protective like that. Colin says, I don't mind baby faces, but I much prefer tweeners and heels because they have an edge to them. That's why. Baby faces are cool when done right. Cody Rhodes, perfect example. But tweeners and heels, I mean, look at Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre, who have had the most compelling stories in the last year. Because they have an edge to them. There's a level of truth to what they're saying. Whereas baby faces, they're meant to be, all high and mighty, righteous, positivity. You like a little bit of an edge. That's why a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin was so popular. In fact, I think he might be the most popular wrestler of all time. If you look at the shirt sales, Austin 316. But I'm with you. I like a good anti-hero. That's why I lean towards guys like Shawn, DX, CM Punk. Come on. Roddy Piper. Like, all these guys have an edge to them. Muhammad says, don't want to get off the subject here. What is the quickest way to get rid of a common cold, and where was Randy Orton at Royal Rumble? Dakota Kai dealing with a bad stream of injuries. So in terms of the best way to get rid of the common cold, what I do is I'm drinking a lot of warm stuff. You're right. I'm drinking tea, water. Of course, water heals all. But yeah, I'm keeping warm. A good plate of soup goes a long way. I know for us, we make a little caldito, a little soup, a little stew, whether it's chicken noodle or something. Get some of those vitamins, get those vegetables. You cook them up, and that liquid in itself, man, that does the job. So I would advise keep warm, keep eating stuff that's warm, nutrients, vegetables, fruits, those kind of stuff, and stay out of the cold. Make sure you're bundled up, and try to get some rest. Sleep goes a long way as a way too. Those are things that help me out. Hopefully you're able to kick that off though, Muhammad. Where was Randy? I don't know. I really thought he was going to come back because Cody had already came back from his pile driver. Randy, of course, is dealing with his pile driver differently because he has a history of back injuries. I would have thought he would have been back by now, but he's not. And now that Kevin Owens seems to be in a feud with Sami Zayn, where does that leave Randy? Because I was sure that Randy was going to fight Kevin at WrestleMania. Now I don't know. And then Dakota Kai, she's dealing with a concussion. She'll be coming back within the next 1 or 2 episodes of Raw. It's really a shame. Dakota Kai has always had that, man. ACL injuries, leg injuries, concussions. It's a shame. Dakota Kai's so cool. I'm a fan of hers. But yeah, she just can't catch a break. Colin says, I feel like I had been watching wrestling when I was a teenager. I would have been insufferable if I knew about Punk because I was straight edge at the time. You know what? And that's the funny thing too. You mentioned that. That's a big reason why I'm straight edge. I don't, just like Punk, I don't partake in, drugs, alcohol, smoking, none of that. Again, I don't judge anyone that does. I want to make that perfectly clear. It's just not for me. And CM Punk was very much a big part of that. I very vividly remember seeing the vignettes of CM Punk during that iteration of ECW back in 2006. Seeing the tattoos. I've always been a tattoo guy. Don't have as many right now, but hey, we'll build that as we go. The music. He had This Fire Burns by Killswitch Engage, which was the theme song for Judgment Day 2006, an event that my family and I had attended. So immediately, you hook me with the tattoos. You hook me with the music. Has a different look than a lot of the wrestlers at that time. Had the piercings, had the long hair. And then there's the promos. So engaging. He spoke about, my name is CM Punk. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. My addiction is wrestling. And it's like, that was it. That was it. It hooked me. And since day one, been a Punk guy. Been a Punk guy. Love it. San Fran 5 says, you had Punk in your teen years. I had Roman Reigns covered in dog food and Dean Ambrose fighting people with a hot dog stand. Yeah, but you know what? I think they're both they're better off now. That's funny you said that, San Fran 5. But Roman's doing great. Tribal Chief, he's cemented himself as one of the greatest of all time. Dean Ambrose, who now known as Moxley, is the reigning and defending AEW champion. In a storyline with the Death Riders that's a hit or miss with a lot of fans. But I think he's better off with that than he was fighting, hot dog stands and whatnot. Alex says, do you think that WWE is going to swerve the fans and have Cena versus Joe Hendry for the TNA title when Cena lowballs Hendry to win the Fight AJ at the PLE event after WrestleMania so AJ can have his final TNA run? Here's the thing, Alex, I'm not opposed to that. But I think it's too complex for them. I don't think they'll go through with it. But how awesome would it be? Because Joe Hendry wants that match with Cena. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the match is going to happen. I think the best case scenario is Cena and Hendry are going to share the ring in a segment. I think that's what we're going to see. I would love to see the matchup. Wouldn't get my hopes up. Now, imagine he wins the TNA championship. And that's number 17. Nobody would have predicted that. Absolutely nobody would have predicted that. But what an impressive feat it would be. WWE champion, world champion, and a TNA world champion for John Cena. And then to fight AJ Styles, the heart and soul of total nonstop action. Get Ready to Fly. I love that theme song by AJ Styles. The Get Ready to Fly. I am. Oh my God, it's great. He beats him for that title. What a story that would be. But man, I think it's a little out there. I'm with you. I'd support it, but don't know if they'll run with it. But that'd be awesome. Colin says, Colin recommends rest, tea, orange juice, lots of vitamin C, lots of salty things. My go-to when I have a cold. Egg foo young with a side of general. Well, there you go. Colin with the knowledge. Muhammad's also straight edge. Shout out. Colin says, I'm no longer straight edge because of my mental health issues. Marijuana is known to help it. So I've heard. So I use that for the symptom management, but I'm cool with people who are or aren't straight edge. I'm the same way. My biggest thing, because some people will ask me, oh, really, you don't drink? No, it's not for me. Never had interest in it. And I'm at this point in my life where it's like, I've gone this far, so I'm not interested in it. And if some people are, totally fine. My biggest thing has always been peer pressure. I'm not a fan of people who try to pressure other people to do it. Oh, here, do this. Just try it. It's like, no, dude. No, dude. If you were my friend, you're going to respect my wishes just the way I respect yours. So, I don't care if someone does it or not. Just don't force other people. Let them decide for themselves. Colin says also, if I'd been booking WWE back in the day, I'd have built a PLE around Punk versus Edge, as I think the promos would have been insane and could have done stuff with the straight edge side. Isn't that crazy that we never really got that? Because the closest thing we got to that was CM Punk cashing in Money in the Bank in 2008. But we never got a full-length program between the two. That's very fascinating that you bring that up, because I didn't really consider that. But yeah, we never got a full-length program between the two. And that would have been cool because it's the rated R superstar Edge, who probably partakes in a little bit of participation there. And then CM Punk. That's interesting. Colin says, not mental health issues, physical ones. I have... Oh, sorry, I said mental. Yes, health issues. I misread. My apologies. Physical ones. I have a rare disorder called syndrome. My apologies. I misspoke. Because you did say health, not mental health. Colin says that could be a video. What a program between Edge and Punk would have been listed. So I've thought about that too, is having a series of like, how would I book a certain story? You know? And I think that's something I would like to do. What I'll probably do is for the memberships, I'll upload those videos where it's how I would book, again, for example, Edge versus Punk. I'll do it for memberships for early access, and then later I'll make it public. Just because I want to give the members that incentive, you know, that way to say, hey, we got early access. You guys get access to exclusive videos, posts, shorts, and early access to other videos as well. And then eventually make them public. But I like the idea. No worries, dude. I understand. Appreciate it. So I told you, sometimes, you know, I speak too fast and I'm reading too quick. And keep in mind, I'm trying to engage with the camera, but I got the chat off to the side here. So thank you for correcting me. Safi says, I always wanted to see Kurt Angle versus Bret Hart. That's one of my dream matches. Kurt versus Bret. And we just missed it. We just missed it. Because Kurt Angle joins the WWE in 99. Really gets going by 2002. You know, after WCW is purchased, he's already who we know and love. Bret Hart goes to WCW and he retires in like 2000 because of that injury, due to, you know, the thrust kick, the super kick by Goldberg. If that never happens, is there a chance we see it? Probably not, because of Montreal. The Montreal Screwjob really keeps Bret out of the WWE. But had there not been a Montreal Screwjob, Kurt versus Bret very well could have happened. And man, give those guys... That's an Iron Man match. Love Shawn and Bret. But Kurt Angle versus Bret in an Iron Man match? Forget about it. Let it go all the way. Let that one go to sudden death. Because that would be... Ooh. I've always said like Bryan Danielson as well. Danielson versus Bret, or Danielson versus Kurt in their primes. Because keep in mind, Kurt Angle, when he was a big part of TNA, and at that time, Ring of Honor had Bryan Danielson. Those two? Whew. Colin says, if you're curious, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I know I'm going to butcher it. But absolutely, if you're curious, it's a connective tissue disorder with hypermobility as one of the core issues. One of its major issues is also joint dislocation along with easily torn. Wow. You know, I'm not going to front. I'm not familiar with that. This is the first I've heard of it. And you say that marijuana, it helps in terms of dealing with that disorder. You said it helps with symptom management. Okay. Yeah, that's new. Ligaments and skin. Oh, easily torn ligaments and skin. Wow. I was not aware of that. But I appreciate the lesson there. You know, it's always important to remain knowledgeable and informed. So whenever there's something new like that, at least something new that I don't know, I'm always an open book. I love retaining knowledge and being taught something new. So thank you for sharing that, Colin. Bill Goldberg ended Bret's career. Sadly, he did. Chad Gable should have had Kurt Angle's last match at Mania, in my opinion. Dude, that would have been crazy. That would have been crazy. And again, just missed it. Kurt Angle wanted John Cena for his last match, but they didn't give it to him. They said, what about the next year? And Kurt's like, I don't think I have another year. And even if they did, WrestleMania 36 was in front of nobody. So Kurt Angle's last match should have been against John. And it's like what's terrible about it is John at WrestleMania 35 when Kurt retired. John didn't even wrestle. He came out with his Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick. He could have fought Kurt, man. Colin says, yeah, because it reduces the inflammation from dislocation and helps with pain management better than traditional painkillers. And they're addictive, no? Any type of painkillers, they can become addictive. As long as there's something out there that isn't causing more harm than good, and it's allowing at least some sort of relief, I think that's the most important thing. I'm sure there's a remedy and some form of therapy for everything. And if that's what's most useful and effective, then I mean, yeah, by all means. And like you said, it helps with pain management better than the traditional painkillers. Well, then go with that alternative. Makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. But again, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being so open enough to share that with us, Colin. Appreciate that. Still lively here. On a Thursday night, we talked about Bruiser Brody. We had a great conversation here so far. Great conversations here. Again, big shout out to Gabs as well, one of the MVPs of the live stream. We can't thank Gabs enough. Colin as well for the engagement here in the live stream. First time I believe we've seen Colin in the live stream. So thank you for that. Salvia as well with some great comments here. Salvia goes on to say Chad Gable could also have been Kurt Angle's son instead of Jason Jordan. I'll never get that. Did they think it was because it was too obvious? Because Chad Gable does kind of have a resemblance, as well as the personality, the moveset, even the ring gear. It was a layup. How can you not put Chad Gable in that position? They put Jason Jordan, which is like no disrespect to Jason Jordan, but Chad Gable was literally right there. And he's been vocal about saying how Kurt Angle is one of his, heroes, essentially. So I'll never get that. I'll never understand that. And then it's like bestowing, again, it's one of those things where it's like the rub. Kurt Angle associated with Chad Gable. If he's associated with Kurt, it's like, hey, something's there, right? Something's there. I feel more inclined to watch Chad Gable. And instead they gave him the Shorty G gimmick. Who remembers the Shorty G? Back in 2019, prior to the Thunderdome era. And now they're finally doing something with him. With the Alpha Academy and America Made. But it's like, I actually am really interested to see what we do now, because he's apparently going off for a little bit here to learn the dark arts of lucha libre. I don't know what the hell that means. Where's he going? Who is he going to talk to? I'm excited. And I hope it leads to some success for Chad Gable. I want to see him win the IC title. He's one of the best in the WWE right now. There's a reason why he was the first man that Penta fought. Because he just meshes well with literally anybody. Put him in the ring with anybody, and it's bound to be solid. So I hope for many successes for Chad Gable, specifically a title win. Give this man the IC title. I would love to see him as a world champion, but I doubt it. Not everybody can win the world title. Colin says, yeah, no problem. And another interesting fact about the disorder is it's closely related to Marfan's syndrome. A lot of NBA players have been diagnosed with one or the other after their careers end. And yet this is indeed the first time I've caught a live stream, as I'm new to the channel in general. Well, regardless, hey, we welcome you. You are a welcomed member of the J area, of this family. I've always said it's like this is more than just, a live stream with random people across the globe. The fact is, the more I have had the opportunity to go live, I've felt more close with a lot of you, to the point where I wouldn't even call you guys friends. You guys are a part of my family here on YouTube, and I appreciate and I value every time you guys are here with me, whether it's just watching or in the chat as well, engaging the conversation. It goes a long way. And to show you guys the support for the channel by partaking in these live streams, by subscribing, by becoming a member of the Main Event Mafia, shout out to Total Nonstop Action, it demonstrates that we have something special here. And the more that we continue to feed into it, I'm hoping it attracts others as well. Whether it's pro wrestling fans, new, old, young, indifferent. Doesn't matter who, what, when, where, or why. I want it to be an opportunity for everyone to come together, have a safe haven of pro wrestling where we can all engage in a conversation that is inclusive to everybody. People who are relapse fans, people who are new fans, or people like me who just really can't quit the bug. So it's awesome to have you guys here. What was even more weird was when Kurt Angle dressed up as a member of the Shield. What a crazy visual, right? Because you had Seth and Dean in their traditional, the black gear, and then Kurt Angle's right behind them, and he has this smile on his face, and he stood out like a sore thumb, but he looked like he was having a good time, and I think that's so awesome. Of course, he had to fill in for Roman, but seeing him dressed up with the Shield, and I don't know if it was recently or if it's been up forever, but I recently saw the picture of Seth and Dean and Kurt in the back as they're preparing for that matchup, and it still never gets old. It doesn't look right, but it actually happened. This was awesome, guys. Appreciate you as well. Appreciate you as always. Just letting you know, tomorrow is Friday, or depending, it might be Friday for some of you already. I am thinking about going live tomorrow, maybe doing some kind of a tier ranking or some sort of fun list, as I would like to do. Obviously, for those who are familiar with the channel, the live stream, there are some days where I'm not able to, obviously, because we have obligations with work. The bills wait for nobody. But tomorrow, have the opportunity, have the chance to maybe go live again. So keep an eye out in the community post. I always make sure to update those live streams in the community tab, as well as in the the page where you see your subscriptions. So keep an eye on that. Probably looking like we're gonna go live at some point tomorrow, maybe 5:00 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 7:00, in that range. It'll be a little bit earlier than today. Traditionally, we go 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time here on the West Coast, but we'll probably go a little earlier. So keep an eye out. I will be placing that in the community tab for sure, probably either at the end of the stream or early tomorrow morning. We also go live on Sundays. We have the episode of the J Area Wrestling Podcast on Mondays, and then throughout the week we have our clips, we have our shorts, so keep an eye out for that as well. Also, of course, the new poll will be up on Sunday, so that we have a new discussion to have next Thursday. Constance in Toronto, it is indeed almost 1 a.m. See, and that's, you guys are crazy. Because I know, like, for example, Colin, it's 1 a.m. over there. I know our friend Kevin is out on the East Coast. And, like, over, like, in New York. So I don't know the conversion. I don't know the world clock off of the top of my head. But I know for a fact it's a few hours ahead. So I know it's already a Friday over there in New York. So shout out to those members of the J area who have stayed with us throughout the course of their night, because it's moving into the next morning. So thank you guys for that. Kurt Angle even had a match against Liam Payne from One Direction. Rest in peace to Liam. I didn't know that until he passed. My sister, big fan of One Direction. I mean, goes way back. We're talking 10 plus years. Went to one of their concerts. And so I'm familiar with, like, Liam, Niall, Harry, Zayn. I'm familiar with them. And I didn't know that he had a match with Kurt. When we found out about his passing, then I started to see online the video circulating online of Liam versus Kurt. And it seemed like it was during his Impact years, Kurt Angle. But I didn't know that until then. That's crazy. Colin says New York is the same time zone as me, and I'm a night owl even when I'm not sick. Usually this is when I get my work done. Shout out. In fact, New York is just a few hour drive for me. Sometimes I forget. Forgive me. Because in Canada, I forget, like, where's Toronto and Montreal in relation to the U.S. border. So yeah, Toronto, same time zone as New York. You said it's a few hour drive for me. One day I would love to go to Canada. just to see, because I hear a lot of good things about Canada, and everyone always talks about like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go to Spain, I want to go to Italy. Don't get me wrong, those are destinations for sure, but I would like to go to Canada one day. Whether it's like Montreal, Toronto, um, somewhere up there. Oh, well, since we have you, Colin, what are some recommendations for anybody who would like to travel over up north to our friends in Canada? Are there any specific locations or places that you would recommend for someone who's never been there to visit? Because I mean, hey, you're a native, you're there, so I would love to hear from you in that regard. But yeah, once again, rest in peace to Liam Payne. So yeah, tomorrow more likely we'll be going. Well, okay, I'll say Friday because again, some of our friends are on Friday already. Friday for sure. We're looking at a live, probably before Friday Night SmackDown. Sunday we'll have another live. Traditionally, we have our lives for those of us who are new to the stream or maybe are just joining us. We have our live streams Sunday, Monday, Thursday. We didn't have one last Sunday. Wasn't able to. Was dealing with family. Nothing bad, but I mean, nonetheless. Um, so Sunday, Monday, Thursdays traditionally are the days that we go live. On occasion, we have other places in the week where we can go live. It's just depending on the openings and when I'm available. But Sunday, Monday, Thursday, those are the days we go live. Colin says for food chains, Mary Brown's is the call. It kills KFC. Burger Priest is also a unique Toronto institution. Okay. So obviously, in my opinion, I think the best guy who went from having minimal tattoos to the best tattoos is Randy. Starting with the great tattoos is Roman Reigns. Randy, dude, I'm old enough to remember when Randy only had like the tribal tattoos on his sides. And then like the one on his upper back. And then he just got the sleeves, which I think are fire. I love the sleeve tattoos that Randy has. It really comes off nicely. Roman has great tattoos. I'm actually a fan of Jey Uso's. His back tattoo is like really well done. The detail on that is ridiculous. Obviously, I'm a Punk guy. I've always liked his tattoos. Undertaker, to see his evolution because early on didn't have as many tattoos. He had like a little bit on the forearm, and then obviously you saw like the Sarah come and go. But again, Taker, a lot of tattoos. One of the gnarliest tattoos that I've always kind of remembered was Bam Bam Bigelow, who had like the skull cap on the tattoo there. I've always wondered, man, I wonder how long that took. How did it feel? Like, what was that about? Rey Mysterio is another guy who, again, for people who don't know, for people who are familiar, I mean, you already know the story. But Rey Mysterio, I was actually fortunate enough to meet him back in 2008. The WWE had came to Arizona for their Cyber Sunday pay-per-view event, and he was doing a meet and greet at like a Nissan dealership. I don't remember specifically what car brand it was. I want to say it was Nissan, but he did a meet and greet, and we were fortunate enough to go ahead and meet him. So there's a photo out there somewhere. I should be in the community tab. I posted it a while ago, but there's a photo of myself and my siblings taking a picture of Ray, who's like the nicest guy. I mean, I remember nothing but positivity, real patient, real caring. I mean, he's exactly who you would want him to be. I love Rey Mysterio. Big respect to him, and I'm just glad he was a good dude. I've heard nothing but good things about him, so really cool to meet him. I cherish that. So shout out to my parents as well for that. Shout out to them for that. Also, I recommend trying the Canadian treats, the Nanomi bars and beaver tails. They're like a pancake kind of idea, but massive and shaped like a beaver tail with a grill mark pattern. Wow. Huh. And again, it's like these are things I would have never thought of, obviously, because I've never been there. But you hooked me at pancake. When you said a pancake kind of an idea, I love pancakes. So I'm down. Colin says, I love Cody's American Nightmare tattoo. I personally have no tattoos, but I love looking at them. It's very nice. it really kind of presents that person. It's a form of expression. Tattoos tell a story. I will say, I think the placement can kind of come into question. I'm already used to it, but I've always wondered why the neck. He could have had it on his, on his deltoid. He could have had it on the other side of his chest. Could have had it anywhere. Why the neck? Nothing against it. I'm used to it now. But the logo itself is fire. The logo itself is fire. Rest in peace to Liam Payne. Tragic and depressing. Constance, here's a fun story. My mom was doing grocery shopping at a Canadian groceries chain. She slipped on some ice and Sami Zayn caught her. She had no idea who he was. She just thought he was an indie actor. No way. Actually, like, that's crazy. That's actually wild. Sami Zayn just seems like a good dude too. He just seems like a good dude. That's crazy though. An indie actor? I guess I can see that. I mean, it also depends too. Like, if it was back in the day when he had the shorter beard and shorter hair, now it's kind of all out there. But like the early days of NXT, I could see the indie actor for sure. My favorite beaver tail is so... Oh, it's to spread Nutella on mine. So I'm not a big Nutella guy, but I did try... There was one time we went to Mexico. And I don't remember what it was called, but it was a nice treat. It was almost like a crepe. But it was wrapped up, it was fried. And it had like bananas, nuts, and a little bit of Nutella. And I was like, okay, Nutella's not that bad. I actually am a fan of Nutella. I'm not going to say I'm crazy for it. I'm not like obsessed. But it was good. So Nutella on that, it kind of sounds similar to what I was thinking of. Some people like bananas and marshmallows on their beaver tails. Hey, it sounds good to me. Banana's my favorite fruit. And I'm not opposed to marshmallows. So, I mean, hey, if I'm ever in the area, God willing, I got to try one of those beaver tails. That's awesome. The great thing about the treat is you can customize it however you want. Those are the best. Those are the best when you're able to really, accommodate to your own liking. Because a lot of times there's people out there who are like, oh, don't take this off. I don't want this. I don't want that. I hate being that guy where it's like, if I'm going to order something and I got to take off at least 2 things or more, I'm not going to order it. Because it's like, why even do it? If it's one thing, okay. But if it's more than 2, it's like, don't even get it. So that's cool. You get to customize it. They sell ketchup chips and all dressed chips here in America. I wish that they had a poutine more here. Yeah, when it comes to like American food, it's weird. And then whenever they try to go like more international and have other options, other people who are familiar with the more, traditional stuff, they say they're not as good. But we're trying to catch up here in America. The base beaver tail is usually just a really big pancake thing with cinnamon. Dude, you're preaching to the choir here. Like, you don't even gotta... You already had me. Right? You already won me over. But with this, I gotta start saving up money to travel. I was gonna say, I wonder if they have any here. I doubt it. I mean, okay, if you're gonna get it, you probably should get it from its, like, place of origin. Poutine is one of my favorite foods. For those who don't know what it is, it's fries, gravy, and cheese curds. Well, there you go. I was not familiar. So hey, there you go. Here out in Arizona, it's a lot of like Hispanic and Mexican food. I'm not, complaining by any means, but there's plenty of other food and cultures out there that I haven't really explored with. If you want, Jose, I can send you a link to a recipe for it, and you can make beaver tails at home. That's actually wild. But I would imagine if it's like a pancake, it shouldn't be too complex to make, right? I would imagine. Because if anything, drop that in the comment. Like in this video, drop that in the comment. Or if anything, there's also like, yeah, it's really not too complex. It's very easy enough. He said it's very easy enough. Kids make them. Dude, if a kid can make it, how can I go wrong? The best ways to reach, I mean, you can do it in the comments. You can do it on Twitter. Because we have a Twitter account here. It's at jareapod_. You'll find that in the link in the description as well as in the about me section. So I mean that's the best way. If you guys ever want to come in contact, I read all the comments. Twitter's probably your best bet. We also have TikTok. Those are your best ways. But I actually would be interested. That'd be kind of cool. What if I like, oh, that'd be interesting. What if I made it and then tried it on a stream? You got me hooked on this, man. You're onto something here. That's cool. Man, hey. So we started this stream talking about Bruiser Brody. And I'm over here learning about things I didn't even know about. That's the beauty of this. Cuz the stream itself was all about informing people about a story that not everybody is familiar with. About Bruiser Brody, about Frank Goodish. And in turn, you guys educate me. You get me better. You guys make me better. So that's awesome. If you haven't guessed it, I'm a foodie. Hey, food's awesome. I've been told because a lot of my analogies are food related. My mom asked me, why is it always food related? Like, everyone eats food. Everyone needs to eat food. Now, me personally, my relationship with food is kind of here or there. For personal reasons, of course. And my relationship with food has gotten better. But I'm always open to trying new things. Have you ever seen the Hart Foundation versus Team Austin Canadian Stampede? Of course. Canadian Stampede regarded as one of the best in your house pay-per-views. The matchup itself, I haven't seen it in a while. I've watched it, but it's been a minute since I've seen it. And I love this too because you guys sending in those kind of like recommendations, it gets me fired up. And it's like, man, I gotta watch that again. I gotta rewatch that. Hart Foundation, that feud between just Bret Hart and Austin in '97. It's what helped put him over the top. I love that feud. One thing I'd love to see done someday is a wrestler cookbook. Just a compilation of famous wrestlers' favorite foods. That would be actually interesting. Someone made a book. Was it Renee Young? I feel like someone did make a cookbook. I mean, it wasn't a compilation of multiple wrestlers, but she's like in the wrestling business. That would be interesting. Just like of everyone's favorite dish. Like, okay, hey, this is, Cody's favorite plate, and this is Rhea Ripley's favorite dish. Jim Ross had a barbecue sauce, if that counts. That's exactly what I thought of. I'm like, well, he does have a barbecue sauce, but I mean, if anyone could have had a cookbook, maybe JR, like a grilling cookbook. Well, guys, we're going to go and start wrapping up here on the live stream. It's been a real treat. It's been real fun talking with you guys about Bruiser Brody, talking about food, talking about tattoos, talking about my disdain for Hulk Hogan. Trust me, if you want a real passionate conversation about something, I'll talk about Hulk Hogan and why I don't like him. That's a wound I'm never afraid to reopen. Constance, also, this is a local specialty to me. A Mexican guy and an Indian guy got together to start a business, and they fused Mexican and Indian cuisines together on paper. It sounds weird, but it's so tasty. I don't doubt it too, because from my understandings, the seasonings and spices that are in like Indian food, I feel like would complement Mexican food because of the spices and the seasonings that we use. So it doesn't really sound all that odd, at least not to me. But that's interesting, to fuse the two together. Jim Cornette would definitely make a book. Jim Cornette would make a book about anything. But it doesn't really have to because he has the podcast. Colin, yep, it complements. My go-to is the lamb curry burrito. That makes sense. That sounds good. That sounds a lamb curry. Yeah, I'm not gonna say like I'm a huge fan of lamb, but I have tried it. I was saying how I used to work in a retirement community. We work specifically in dining, so I was exposed to a lot of different cuisines and dishes that, again, I might not be familiar with at home, but it's always good to, widen your horizons and learn about new cultures, learn about new things. So if there's anything I've taken away, if there's one thing that I hope you guys take away from this live stream, because it's something I take away, is that this is a great opportunity to share a lot of information with one another. And we should always be remaining open-minded about it. So I thank you for that. But with that being said, we're going to go and start winding down. Of course, make sure you guys join us tomorrow. We're going to go live again a little bit earlier. Keep an eye out for the community tab. It'll show you the start time for that. Probably we'll do some kind of a tier list, some kind of discussion. Of course, the conversation is always open. It's dictated by you guys, the members of the J Area. We'll go live again on Sunday. The J Area Wrestling Podcast on Monday, and throughout the week, of course, we have our shorts and our clips from the streams and the podcast themselves. It's been awesome. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been really fun talking about pro wrestling, amongst other things, with you here on a Thursday night for me, a Friday morning for others. But nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and start winding down here. Muhammad said see you, and bye for now. See you guys next time. Appreciate it. Of course, with that being said, like Muhammad said, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you to everyone who joined us in the live stream tonight. Major thanks to Colin, who joined us for the first time in a live stream. Hope to see you again for the future ones as well. Always welcome to come back. Big shout out to Gabs as well for just the generosity and the love and support that you've shown us since the get-go. It truly means the world. It's encouraging, it's validating, and again, it warms my heart to see that level of investment and love for what we do here. So a big shout out to Gabs as well. Hope to see you guys again soon. We'll be going live. Hope to see you guys then. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening/morning. Stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Appreciate you guys.